In this video, I'm going to share with you some things that you've been told about Mexico that just aren't true. The first myth is that all cops here are federales. I grew up in the US and my whole life, anytime someone referred to a Mexican cop, they always called them federales. Well, those are the federal police. There's also state police and municipal police. There's various kinds of military, the National Guard, the Army. All of these look like police cars driving around. There's also transit cops, so it's much more than federales. And the second misconception is that cops always want a bribe. Now, I'm not saying this doesn't happen, but I think the perception as to how often it happens is way blown out of proportion. I've been living in Mexico for about 5 years now. I've been to almost every single one of the Mexican states, to over 100 cities throughout the country. And in that time, I've been pulled over 50 plus times, and not a single time has a cop tried to get a bribe out of me. Now, you're much more likely to experience a shakedown if you were actually doing something wrong. I'm generally trying to follow the law, so that has helped me out. And there are a few parts of the country where this corruption is more prevalent. For example, places near San Diego, near Tijuana, those areas, also around Mexico City, and also in the Riviera Maya around Cancun. But outside of those areas, I think you're pretty unlikely to experience cops trying to get a bribe out of you. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does, but it's way blown out of proportion. Americans can't own property in Mexico. I've heard this myth so many times that I want to rip my hair out whenever I hear it, and it's at least once a day in the comments section of Tangerine Travels. But the truth is, Americans and other foreigners can own property in Mexico, but there's a couple things you need to know about it. First, there's a restricted zone and a non-restricted zone. The restricted zone is within 50 kilometers of a coastline or 100 kilometers of a country border. So if you're in that restricted zone, which is a very small part of the country, you do have to take an extra step to buy property. But if you're outside of that restricted zone, you can buy property anywhere in your name and you can own it outright. But if you're in that restricted zone, well, then you have a couple of options. The most popular option is to buy it through a land trust. And with a land trust, there's also a myth about this, and that is that it's a lease. It is not a lease. The trust controls the property and a bank holds the trust, but the trust lasts for a long time and it's renewable. It's not a lease. You can have it forever. It's just not directly in your name. And the second way is you can start a Mexican corporation and have the corporation buy the property in the restricted zone, and the corporation can be 100% owned by foreigners. Hollywood would have you believe that Mexico is just comprised of beaches and desert, but this is far from the truth. Mexico, believe it or not, has every type of landscape you could imagine. It has mountains and desert and prairie and rolling hills and pine trees and all sorts of stuff. It even has jungles and rainforests and, of course, beaches and desert as well. But that is by no means the extent of it. The next misconception, I'm a little bit ashamed to admit that I actually had this misconception when living in the United States, and that is that any wealthy Mexican is a narco. And honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. And why did I think this? It's because it's what I heard. It's what I knew. What I knew was that Mexico was poor, the whole country was poor, but there were some very rich people and they were all narcos. But the truth of the matter is, yes, there are some rich Mexicans who come from dirty money, whether that's narcos or being in a political position or earning their money in other nefarious ways like kidnapping through ransom, that kind of thing. But the vast majority of wealthy Mexicans have earned their money legitimately from legitimate businesses. So who are the wealthy Mexicans? They're the ones who make the economy run. They're the ones who started all the businesses you see around the city, the home builders, the restaurant owners, and all the ones providing all the services that people use in their everyday life. That's the vast majority of the wealthy Mexicans, not narcos. The next misconception is that the whole country is super poor and everyone living in Mexico is living in poverty. Now, Are there a lot of people living in poverty here? Yeah. But there's also a pretty large middle class as well. And before coming to Mexico, I had this ignorant idea in my head of what the cities look like, and I pictured a lot of homes like built out of pallets with metal roofs or something like that, like basically the cheapest way you could make a structure to live in. But the truth is that in any one of these population centers, here where I live in Querétaro, Mexico City, Guadalajara, or where the vast majority of Mexicans live, even the poor people still live in homes that look like homes, not like shacks. So there's that, but also I had this idea that there wouldn't be really nice neighborhoods or something like that. However, here where I live in Querétaro, it's a city of about 1 million people, and I don't know the whole city, I haven't been everywhere, but in my estimation, I would say there's about 30 neighborhoods, that's 30, around the city that the average American would say, hey, this is a really nice neighborhood. Another myth is that if you leave the resort, something terrible will happen to you. The number of times I've heard, oh, you're going to Mexico? Be careful, don't leave the resort. I don't want to see anything bad happen to you. So that's a myth. Is that the truth? Not even close. I'm not trying to say bad things don't happen here, because bad things do happen here. But at the same time, is it way overblown by the US media? Absolutely. So come here, enjoy it, keep your wits about you, don't do stupid stuff, and you're probably going to be fine. If you have a business here, you'll have to pay the cartel protection money. The number of times I've heard this, I can't even count. However, is there truth to this? I mean, it happens, but again, it's something that's way overblown. In my 5 years here, I've met many different business owners, and I've talked to a lot of them about this, and not a single one of them has said that they've had the cartel try to shake them down. Something that does happen though, and this is actually pretty common, is that people will pretend to be a part of the cartel, wanting you to give them money every month. And this is a scary part, not knowing if it's an actual threat or not. And this happens, but more often than not, it's actually someone calling from jail, trying to get funds for them to live a better life while they're in jail in Mexico. Another common belief that foreigners have about Mexico is that it's hot everywhere here. The number of times I've seen in my comment section, like, how could you live there without a pool? Or, how dare you take your husky to Mexico? It's so hot there. Well, is it hot in a lot of the coastal destinations, the places that a lot of people vacation in? Yeah, but the vast majority of Mexico, the vast majority of the country sits at 5,000 feet of elevation or above. It's a very mountainous country. And what that means is that in most of the country, it has a very moderate climate year round. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click on this one next, and I'll see you over there.